The morning sun cast long shadows across the Sullivan Ranch, but inside the sprawling Texas home, chaos reigned supreme. Marcus Sullivan stood in his kitchen, staring at what could generously be called scrambled eggs, but looked more like yellow concrete mixed with charcoal. Smoke drifted from the pan, while 7 children thundered down the stairs like a stampede of wild horses. "Dad, the eggs are burning again," Sarah called out, her 14-year-old voice carrying the weight of someone far older. She rushed to turn off the burner while simultaneously braiding 10-year-old Emma's hair with practiced efficiency. "I'm not eating that," Tyler announced, slouching into the kitchen in yesterday's clothes. At 16, Marcus's oldest son had perfected the art of looking perpetually annoyed with the world. "I'll grab something at school." "You'll eat what's here," Marcus replied automatically, though he couldn't blame the boy. The eggs did look inedible. 6-year-old Lily tugged at her father's worn jeans. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming back to make pancakes?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow, same as it did every time. 3 years. It had been 3 years since Beth lost her battle with cancer, and Lily still asked. The twins, Jake and Josh, exchanged glances at 12. They remembered enough to know better, but were still young enough to hope. 8-year-old Noah sat quietly at the table, picking at a piece of burnt toast. He'd been the quietest since Beth died, afraid of the dark, afraid of loud noises, afraid of being left alone. Sometimes Marcus caught him staring at empty spaces, as if waiting for his mother to materialize. "Mom's not coming back. Lily," Emma whispered gently, her artist's eyes holding too much understanding for someone her age. "Remember, she's in heaven now." Sarah clapped her hands sharply. "All right, everyone grab cereal. Bus comes in 10 minutes. She moved with military precision, the unofficial mother of the household, and Marcus felt the familiar stab of guilt. No 14-year-old should have to be this responsible, as the children scattered to gather backpacks and shoes. Marcus leaned against the counter, overwhelmed by the simple act of starting another day. The ranch that had once echoed with laughter now felt cavernous, filled with the ghosts of family dinners and birthday celebrations that Beth had orchestrated with effortless grace. His phone buzzed with a text from his foreman. "North fence needs repair." Cattle got out again. Marcus rubbed his temples. Between the ranch, 7 kids, and the constant struggle to keep food on the table without poisoning anyone, he was drowning. That's when he saw the note stuck to the refrigerator in Sarah's careful handwriting. "Dad, we need help. Please." That evening, after another disaster involving what was supposed to be spaghetti but resembled rubber bands and red paint, Marcus sat at his computer. The house was finally quiet. Children bathed and in bed, though he could hear Lily crying softly for her mother and Noah's muffled sobs from his room. He stared at the blank Craigslist posting for a long time before typing, "Cook needed. Part-time position for large family. 7 children, ages 6 to 16. Must be patient, experienced, and comfortable with chaos. Ranch setting outside Austin. References required. Competitive pay. Start immediately." His finger hovered over the post button. Admitting he needed help felt like admitting failure. But Beth's voice seemed to whisper in his memory. "Pride never fed a hungry child. Marcus." He clicked post. The responses came quickly. Too quickly. Most applicants hung up after hearing 7 children. Others quoted prices that would require him to sell the ranch. One particularly memorable caller asked if the position came with hazard pay. Marcus was about to delete the posting when his phone rang at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Mr. Sullivan, this is Elena Rodriguez. I'm calling about the cooking position." Her voice was steady, professional, with the faintest trace of a Spanish accent that reminded him of warm evenings and gentle laughter. For some reason, it made him think of Beth. 7 kids, he said bluntly, his standard opener designed to scare away the weak-hearted. "I saw that in the posting. Youngest is 6, oldest is 16, and thinks he knows everything." 16-year-olds usually do. Marcus paused. Most callers had hung up by now. "They're not easy. Lost their mother 3 years ago. They don't warm up to people." "Neither do most good things," Elena replied quietly. "They take time. Something in her tone made Marcus sit up straighter. You have experience with kids. A pause. I have experience with grief. The honesty in those 5 words told Marcus more than any resume could. Can you start tomorrow 3 to 7 p.m. to begin with? I'll be there. She hung up before he could ask for references, previous employment, or any of the standard questions. Somehow. He didn't care. The next afternoon, Marcus found himself pacing the kitchen like an expectant father. The children would be home from school soon, and he had no idea what to expect from this Elena Rodriguez. Would she take one look at the chaos and flee? Would the kids be horrible to her? Would Tyler say something deliberately cruel? At exactly 3 p.m., a soft knock came at the back door. Marcus opened it to find a woman in her late 30s with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and eyes the color of coffee. She wore jeans, a simple white blouse, and carried a worn leather bag that looked like it had seen many kitchens. Mr. Sullivan, I'm Elena. Marcus, he corrected, stepping aside. Come in. She entered with quiet confidence, her gaze taking in the kitchen without judgment. Marcus watched her notice the pile of dishes in the sink, the blackened pan still sitting on the stove from his morning egg disaster, the children's artwork covering every inch of the refrigerator. Nice space, she said, and meant it. Good light, plenty of room. When do the children get home? Any minute now. Fair warning, they're going to test you. Elena smiled, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Good. I'd be worried if they didn't. As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of the school bus rumbled up the drive. Car doors slammed. Voices rose in argument, and the cavalry charge of 7 pairs of feet thundered up the porch steps. Remember, Marcus said quickly, Tyler's the oldest and angriest. Sarah tries to mother everyone. The twins are chaos incarnate. Emma barely speaks. Noah hides from new people. And Lily asks when mommy's coming home. Elena finished softly. I understand. The back door exploded open, and the Sullivan children poured into the kitchen like a force of nature. They stopped short when they saw Elena, 7 pairs of eyes ranging from curious to hostile studying this stranger in their domain. Tyler, tall and lanky with his father's stubborn jaw, crossed his arms. Who's this? This is Elena, Marcus said. She's going to help with cooking. We don't need help, Tyler shot back. We're fine. Sarah, ever the diplomat, stepped forward. I'm Sarah. Thank you for coming. But her eyes remained wary, protective. The twins, Jake and Josh, identical except for a small scar above Jake's left eyebrow, whispered to each other in their secret language. Emma hung back, clutching a drawing pad to her chest. Noah had already disappeared behind his father's legs. Lily, however, marched straight up to Elena with the fearless curiosity of a 6-year-old. Are you going to make us real food? Daddy burns everything. Elena knelt to Lily's level. What's your favorite real food? Pancakes. But they have to be fluffy, not flat, and with faces made of berries. Pancakes with faces, Elena mused seriously. That's very important. Flat pancakes are definitely not acceptable, despite himself. Marcus saw Tyler's mouth twitch almost into a smile. I don't like pancakes, announced Josh. They're too sweet. What do you like? Elena asked. Tacos, but not the crunchy kind. The soft ones with cheese and… Josh likes everything with cheese, Jake interrupted. He'd put cheese on ice cream if Mom… He stopped abruptly, the kitchen falling silent. Elena didn't flinch. Cheese is excellent. Cheese makes everything better. Not ice cream, Emma whispered, speaking for the first time. Actually, Elena said conspiratorially, there's something called mascarpone cheese that's delicious on strawberries. It's like ice cream's sophisticated cousin. Emma's eyes widened with interest. All right, Elena announced, standing and clapping her hands together. Who wants to help me figure out what's in your kitchen? We know what's in our kitchen, Tyler said defensively. Good. Then you can show me where your mother kept the good spices. The words hung in the air. Marcus tensed, waiting for the explosion, the tears, the angry outburst that usually followed any mention of Beth's belongings. Instead, Sarah stepped forward. Mom kept them in the cabinet above the stove. She said height kept them away from little hands but close to the cooking. Elena nodded approvingly. Smart woman. High heat ruins most spices. May I? Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Elena opened the cabinet to reveal neat rows of spice jars, many untouched since Beth's death. She selected a few, opened them, and inhaled deeply. These are beautiful. Someone who collected spices like this knew how to cook with love. Mom taught herself, Sarah said quietly. She said cooking was like painting, but you could eat the art. She was right. Elena pulled down oregano, cumin, paprika. Tonight, we're going to paint with flavors. Who wants to help? Before Marcus knew it. All 7 children were crowded around Elena as she examined the contents of the refrigerator and pantry. Even Tyler had gravitated closer, though he maintained his mask of indifference. We have chicken, rice, some vegetables that have seen better days, Elena muttered. Jake, Josh, how do you feel about helping me cut vegetables? I'm Jake, said Josh. I'm Josh, said Jake. Elena looked between them seriously. Let me guess. You two switched names to confuse people. The twins grinned. Busted. Good. I like people who keep me on my toes. Jake, she pointed to the real Jake. You're on carrot duty. Josh. Peppers. Sarah. Can you show me where your mother kept the rice, Emma? I need someone with an artistic eye to arrange the chicken in this pan. Noah. She looked around, finding him still hiding behind Marcus. Noah, I have a very important job for you. The 8-year-old peeked out, curious despite his shyness. I need someone to taste everything and tell me if it needs more love. How do you taste love? Lily asked. That's the secret, Elena said. Winking. When food is made with love, it tastes like home. For the next 2 hours, the Sullivan kitchen transformed. Elena directed the children with gentle authority, giving each one a task that made them feel important. She taught Jake how to cut carrots on the diagonal. It's fancier and they cook more evenly. Showed Josh how to remove pepper seeds without getting them under his fingernails. And let Emma arrange the chicken pieces in the pan like a work of art. Tyler, despite his best efforts to remain aloof, found himself drawn into conversation about spices and cooking techniques. Elena treated him like an adult, asking his opinion on seasoning levels and actually listening to his answers. Sarah watched with the careful attention of someone used to being in charge, but gradually relaxed as she realized Elena wasn't trying to take over. She was trying to help. Noah's job as official taster meant he got to try each component as it was prepared. Soon he was giggling as Elena dramatically presented him with a spoonful of rice to test, complete with formal announcement, the court taster will now determine if the royal rice requires additional salt. Lily appointed herself Elena's sous chef, which mostly involved standing on a step stool and narrating everything Elena did in a running commentary that kept everyone laughing. Marcus stood in the doorway, forgotten, watching his children engage with this stranger in a way he hadn't seen since Beth died. They were laughing, actually laughing. When was the last time he'd heard genuine laughter in this house? The smells emanating from the stove were rich and complex cumin and paprika, sauté onions, fresh herbs. It smelled like the home he remembered, before grief had moved in and taken up residence in every corner. Daddy, Lily called out. Elena says you have to set the table, 'cause you're the dad, and dads have to help too. Is that so? Marcus raised an eyebrow at Elena, who shrugged innocently. Family meals are team efforts, she said. Everyone contributes. As Marcus pulled plates from the cabinet, the good ones, he noticed. The ones they hadn't used since Beth's last birthday, Elena quietly orchestrated the final preparations. The chicken emerged from the oven golden and aromatic. The rice was perfectly fluffy, and the vegetables still had that perfect crisp tender bite. All right, everyone wash hands, Elena announced. It's time to eat. They gathered around the table that had sat mostly empty for 3 years. 7 children and 1 bewildered father watching as Elena served up plates of food that looked and smelled like something from a restaurant. But more than that, it felt ceremonial, important, like something worth gathering for. Marcus took his first bite and nearly groaned with pleasure. The chicken was perfectly seasoned, the rice fragrant with saffron and herbs, the vegetables bright and flavorful. But beyond the technical excellence, there was something else, a warmth, a comfort that he'd forgotten food could provide. "This is real food," Lily announced solemnly. "Mom would have liked this," Emma whispered, and instead of the usual uncomfortable silence that followed any mention of Beth, the children nodded in agreement. "Tell me about your mom's cooking," Elena said gently. "What was her specialty?" Sarah looked to Marcus, who nodded encouragement. "She made the best Sunday breakfast," Sarah began. "Pancakes with berries arranged in smiley faces, bacon that was perfectly crispy, fresh orange juice. She sang while she cooked," Josh added. "Always off-key, but she didn't care. Remember her chocolate chip cookies?" Jake chimed in. "She put sea salt on top, and Tyler always said it was weird until he tried them." Tyler, caught off guard by being mentioned, blushed slightly. "They were pretty good," he admitted. "She made soup when we were sick," Noah offered quietly. "Chicken soup that made everything better. And birthday cakes," Emma added. "She never used a mix, always from scratch, and she let us help stir." Elena listened to each memory with complete attention, nodding and asking gentle questions that drew out more stories. Marcus watched in amazement as his children, who rarely talked about their mother anymore, shared memory after memory, their faces bright with recollection rather than shadowed with grief. "She sounds like she was an amazing cook," Elena said when the stories wound down. "And an amazing mother." "She was," Marcus said quietly. I just, I can't cook like she did." "You don't have to," Elena replied. "Every cook is different. Every meal tells a different story." After dinner, Elena insisted on teaching the children to clean as they went. A good cook always cleans their workspace, and soon the kitchen was spotless, the dishwasher humming, and 7 children with full bellies and bright eyes. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Lily asked, wrapping her arms around Elena's waist. Elena looked to Marcus, who nodded perhaps too eagerly. "I'll be here." As Elena gathered her things to leave, Marcus walked her to the door. The evening air was soft and warm, filled with the sounds of crickets and the distant lowing of cattle. "Thank you," Marcus said. "I don't know what you did in there, but I just cooked dinner," Elena replied. "Your children did the rest." "Cool, and they haven't talked about their mother like that in months. Usually when someone mentions Beth, everyone gets uncomfortable and changes the subject." Elena was quiet for a moment, studying the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Grief is like a wound," she said finally. "If you keep it covered and never let it breathe, it festers. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let it have some air." Marcus looked at her more closely. "You sound like you know something about grief." "Everyone does, in their own way." Elena's voice was soft, distant. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Marcus?" She walked to her car, an older Honda with a dent in the driver's side door, and drove away, leaving Marcus standing on his porch wondering what exactly had just happened to his family. Inside, he found the children getting ready for bed without the usual fights, complaints, or negotiations. Sarah was helping Lily brush her teeth. The twins were actually putting their clothes in the hamper, and Tyler was reading to Noah something that hadn't happened in over a year. "Dad?" Emma appeared at his elbow, clutching her drawing pad. "I drew something." She opened the pad to reveal a picture of their dinner table, all 8 of them sitting around it, with detailed depictions of the food Elena had prepared. In the corner, barely visible unless you knew to look for it, was a gentle figure with angel wings watching over them all. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Marcus said, his throat tight. "Elena's nice," Emma said simply. "Mom would like her." As Marcus tucked his youngest daughter into bed that night, Lily looked up at him with serious eyes. "Daddy, I think the pretty lady with the nice food might stay." "Would you like that?" Marcus asked. Lily considered this with 6-year-old gravity. "Yes, but not to be my new mommy, just to be Elena." Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought, just to be Elena. Maybe that was exactly what they all needed. The next morning brought the usual chaos. Tyler couldn't find his football cleats. The twins had forgotten about a science project due that day. Sarah was stressed about a Spanish test. Emma couldn't locate her favorite drawing pencils. Noah had bad dreams and climbed into Marcus's bed at 3 a.m. And Lily insisted on wearing her tutu to school because it was Fancy Tuesday. Marcus was contemplating the benefits of boarding school for all 7 children when Elena knocked on the kitchen door at 7:30 a.m. "You're early," Marcus said. Opening the door, she carried 2 large thermal bags and wore an apron that read, "Kiss the Cook," in faded letters. "I thought I'd make breakfast," Elena said. "If that's okay." Marcus stepped aside wordlessly. He'd been attempting scrambled eggs again, with predictably disastrous results. Elena unpacked her bags efficiently. Fresh fruit, yogurt, what appeared to be homemade muffins, and ingredients for what looked like it might become pancakes. Real pancakes. "Elena!" Lily's delighted shriek came from the stairs, followed by the thunder of 6 other pairs of feet racing to the kitchen. "Good morning, my helpers," Elena said warmly. "Who wants to help me make the most important meal of the day?" "Breakfast is the most important meal," Sarah recited automatically. "Actually," Elena said, winking, "the most important meal is the one you share with people you care about. Breakfast, lunch, dinner doesn't matter. It's about being together." She had them organized in minutes. Sarah in charge of fruit salad, the twins measuring flour for pancakes, Emma arranging muffins on a platter like a flower garden, Noah setting the table with extra care, and Lily narrating the entire process in her running commentary style. Tyler, who had entered the kitchen with his usual scowl, found himself reluctantly drawn into conversation about the chemistry of pancake batter. Elena explained how the baking powder created bubbles that made the pancakes fluffy, and why you couldn't overmix the batter. "It's like life," she said, folding the wet ingredients into the dry with practiced ease. "Sometimes the best results come from knowing when to stop trying so hard." Marcus watched Tyler actually nod thoughtfully at this observation. The pancakes that emerged from Elena's careful attention were perfect fluffy, golden, and sized just right for small hands. She showed Lily how to use berries to make faces, creating a dozen different expressions that had all the children giggling. "This one looks like Tyler when he's grumpy," Josh announced, pointing to a pancake with a distinctly frowning blueberry mouth. "It does not," Tyler protested, but he was fighting a smile. Elena had also produced real maple syrup, fresh butter, and what she called fancy orange juice, fresh squeezed with just a hint of vanilla, as the family sat around the table. Marcus marveled at the difference 24 hours could make. His children were talking over each other in their eagerness to share plans for the day, asking Elena questions about cooking, making jokes, and actually eating a complete breakfast instead of grabbing granola bars on their way out the door. "Elena," Noah said quietly, "could you teach me to make pancakes for Father's Day?" Marcus felt his heart skip. Father's Day was still months away, but Noah was already planning ahead, thinking about giving instead of just receiving. "Of course," Elena said. "It'll be our special project." "I want to learn too," Emma added. "I could draw the recipe so we don't forget." "Can we have a cooking class?" Lily asked excitedly. "Like in a real school, but just for food?" Elena looked to Marcus, who found himself nodding. "I think that sounds like a wonderful idea." After the children left for school on time, with full bellies and lunch boxes packed with leftover muffins, Marcus lingered in the kitchen while Elena cleaned up. "You don't have to do the dishes," he said. "That's not what I'm paying you for." "What are you paying me for?" Elena asked, genuinely curious. Marcus considered this. "I thought I was hiring someone to cook, but I think what I really needed was someone to help my family remember how to be a family." Elena paused in her wiping of the counter. "They never forgot. They just needed permission to remember." "What made you want to do this work, cooking for other people's families?" Elena was quiet for a long moment, her hands stilling on the dish towel. "I used to have a family of my own," she said finally. "My daughter used to help me cook. She had opinions about everything: too much salt, Not enough cheese. Why can't we have dessert for breakfast? Elena smiled, but it was edged with sadness. Afterward, I couldn't cook for just myself anymore. Food is meant to be shared. Marcus waited, sensing there was more to the story, but Elena turned back to the counter. The moment of vulnerability passed. I should go, she said. I have some errands to run before this afternoon. Elena, Marcus called as she reached the door. Thank you. For whatever you're doing here. Whatever this is, thank you. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Thank you for letting me be part of it. After she left, Marcus found himself staring at the kitchen table, still set with cheerful placemats and the lingering scent of maple syrup and fresh coffee. For the first time in 3 years, his house felt like a home again. That afternoon, Elena returned as promised, and the pattern continued. She approached each child with patience and genuine interest, drawing them out of their shells with gentle questions and shared tasks. Tyler, resistant to authority figures since his mother's death, found himself actually listening to Elena's stories about working in restaurant kitchens. Sarah, who'd shouldered responsibility far beyond her years, began to relax as Elena took charge of meal planning and preparation. The twins discovered that Elena could keep up with their rapid-fire conversation and didn't get confused when they switched identities. Emma showed Elena her drawings, including several depicting elaborate meals she'd imagined. Noah began speaking up more, sharing his opinions about flavors and textures, and Lily had adopted Elena as her new best friend, following her around the kitchen and chattering constantly about everything from her day at school to her theories about why cats don't like baths. But it was during the third week that Marcus began to notice something else. He'd come in from the ranch early to find Elena standing at the kitchen window, motionless, staring out at the pasture beyond. In her hands was a wooden spoon she'd been using to stir something on the stove, but she seemed to have forgotten about it entirely. Elena, Marcus said softly. She startled, turning toward him with eyes that looked momentarily lost. Oh, I didn't hear you come in. Everything okay? Of course, just thinking. But her smile was forced, and Marcus caught something in her expression that reminded him of his own reflection in the months after Beth died, that look of someone trying to hold themselves together through sheer willpower. That evening, after the children were in bed, Marcus found Elena in the kitchen again, mechanically washing dishes that were already clean. The kids are asleep, he said gently. You can go home. Elena looked down at the plate in her hands as if surprised to find it there. Right, of course. Elena, are you sure you're okay? You seem... I'm fine, she said quickly. Too quickly. Just tired. But as she gathered her things to leave, Marcus noticed her hands were shaking slightly. Whatever Elena Rodriguez was carrying, it was heavier than she was letting on. The next day brought unseasonably cold weather for Texas in October. And with it, 8-year-old Noah's first asthma attack in over a year. Marcus was in the barn when his phone rang. Sarah's panicked voice on the other end. Dad, come quick. Noah can't breathe. He'd never run so fast in his life, arriving at the house to find Elena on her knees beside Noah, who was wheezing and gasping on the kitchen floor. The other children stood in a terrified circle, Lily crying, Emma holding her drawing pad like a shield. When did it start? Marcus asked, grabbing Noah's inhaler from the emergency kit. 5 minutes ago, Elena said calmly, though her face was pale. He was fine. Then he started coughing. Then this. I called 911. They're on their way. Marcus administered the inhaler while Elena kept Noah calm, speaking to him in low, soothing tones. You're okay, sweetheart. Just breathe with me. In and out. In and out. The paramedics arrived within minutes, and while they worked, Elena gathered the other children in the living room, distracting them with stories and keeping them calm while their world tilted on its axis once again. At the hospital, Noah recovered quickly once he was on oxygen and proper medication. The doctor explained it was likely triggered by the weather change combined with new routines. New people, even positive changes, could sometimes overwhelm a sensitive child's system. He'll be fine, the doctor assured Marcus. Kids are resilient, but you might want to watch for triggers. On the drive home, Noah fell asleep in the back seat while the other children peppered Marcus with questions. Was Noah going to be okay? Would he have to go back to the hospital? Was this like when Mom got sick? Marcus answered as best he could, but his own hands were shaking. The terror of almost losing another family member, the helplessness of watching his child struggle to breathe, it brought back every horrible moment of Beth's illness. When they arrived home, Elena was waiting on the porch with a thermos of soup and a basket of fresh bread rolls. "How is he?" she asked immediately. "Better. Sleeping." Marcus carried Noah upstairs while the other children gathered around Elena, seeking comfort in her calm presence. Later, after Noah was settled in bed and the other children had been reassured and tucked in, Marcus found Elena in the kitchen, preparing what looked like enough soup to feed an army. "You don't have to do all this," he said. "I'm sure you want to go home and actually," Elena interrupted, "I was wondering if I could stay tonight, on the couch, in case Noah needs anything, or if the other kids have nightmares about today." Marcus looked at her more closely. Her hands were steady now, her voice calm, but there was something in her eyes, a depth of understanding that spoke of experience with trauma, with loss, with the terrible fragility of life. "You don't have to do that," he said softly. "I know," Elena replied. "I want to." That night, Marcus woke several times to check on Noah, and each time he found Elena already there, sitting quietly in the chair beside Noah's bed, or in the hallway checking on the other children, or downstairs making tea for anyone who couldn't sleep. She moved through his house like a guardian angel, anticipating needs before they were voiced, providing comfort without being asked. When Lily woke crying from a nightmare about Noah disappearing, Elena was there with warm milk and a gentle song. When Tyler, tough 16-year-old Tyler, crept downstairs at 2 a.m. because he couldn't stop thinking about losing another family member, Elena made him a grilled cheese sandwich and let him talk through his fears without judgment. In the morning, Marcus found Elena asleep on the couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her face peaceful but shadowed with exhaustion. On the coffee table beside her was a notebook, open to a page covered with what looked like recipes, but written in a child's handwriting. As Marcus leaned closer to look, Elena stirred and woke. "Sorry," she said, sitting up quickly and closing the notebook. "I didn't mean to fall asleep." "Don't apologize. You've been taking care of my family all night." Marcus sat down across from her. "Elena, can I ask you something?" She nodded, though her posture tensed slightly. "Yesterday, when Noah couldn't breathe, you knew exactly what to do. You stayed calm. You called 911. You helped the other kids. Most people would have panicked." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "I've been in emergencies before. With your own children." The question hung in the air between them. Elena's hands tightened on the closed notebook, and Marcus saw her struggle with how much to reveal. "I had a daughter," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sophia. She would have been 10 now." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "Would have been. She died 2 years ago. Car accident." Elena's voice was steady, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the notebook. "My husband, too." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. This woman who had brought such life and warmth into his home, who had helped his children heal and laugh again, was carrying her own devastating loss. "Elena, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It's not something I talk about." She looked down at the notebook. This was hers, Sophia's recipe notebook. She used to help me cook, and she'd write down her own versions of recipes, usually involving way too much chocolate and not nearly enough vegetables. "Is that why you're here with us?" Elena met his eyes, and in them, Marcus saw a pain that mirrored his own. "I couldn't cook anymore. After, food was something we shared, something we made together. Cooking for just myself felt empty, but cooking for your family, watching your children enjoy meals and learn and laugh, it helps. It makes the cooking feel meaningful again." Marcus reached across the space between them and gently covered her hands with his. "You don't have to carry that alone anymore." Elena looked at their joined hands, and for a moment Marcus thought she might pull away, Instead, she turned her palms up and squeezed his fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. Upstairs, footsteps thundered on the floorboards as 7 children began their morning routine, but for just a moment longer. Marcus and Elena sat in the quiet understanding of 2 people who had loved and lost and were learning to love again. The rhythm of their days shifted after that night. Elena arrived earlier and stayed later, becoming less of an employee and more of a what Marcus wasn't sure how to define what she was becoming. She wasn't trying to replace Beth. She was too respectful of his wife's memory for that. But she was filling spaces in their family that had been empty for too long. She instituted cooking school on Saturday mornings, teaching each child techniques appropriate to their age and interest level. Tyler learned to properly season meat and manage cooking temperatures. Sarah mastered knife skills and sauce preparation. The twins specialized in breakfast items, pancakes, omelets, and their particular favorite, bacon that was perfectly crispy but not burned. Emma focused on decorative elements, turning simple dishes into works of art. Noah became the family's official taster, developing a sophisticated palate for spices and seasonings. And Lily appointed herself head of special ingredients, love, laughter, and the occasional glitter that somehow made everything taste better. But it was the quiet moments that began to matter most to Marcus. The way Elena hummed while she cooked, unconsciously echoing Beth's old habit. How she listened to each child's day with complete attention, asking follow-up questions that showed she truly cared about their answers. The gentle authority with which she settled disputes, and the patience she showed when helping with homework that had somehow become part of her unofficial duties. One evening in late October, Marcus came in from the barn to find the kitchen empty, except for Elena, who was sitting at the table with a cup of tea and Sophia's recipe notebook open in front of her. "Kids already in bed?" he asked, washing his hands at the sink. "Sarah took charge of bedtime stories tonight." Elena replied, "She's very responsible. Too responsible sometimes. I worry she's growing up too fast. She's protecting her family the only way she knows how." Elena said, "But she's still a child who needs protecting, too." Marcus poured himself coffee and sat across from Elena. "May I ask what you're reading?" Elena hesitated, then turned the notebook toward him. Sophia's recipe for monster cookies. They were basically chocolate chip cookies with everything she could think of, added M&Ms, pretzels, marshmallows, sprinkles. Marcus smiled. "Sounds like something Lily would invent." They have very similar tastes in dessert architecture. Elena's fingers traced the childish handwriting. "Sophia was convinced that the more ingredients you added, the more love the cookies contained." "Smart kid." "She was." Elena's voice grew soft. "She would have loved your children, especially Lily. They both believe in magic." "Elena," Marcus said carefully, "can I ask what happened? You don't have to tell me, but—" Elena closed the notebook and wrapped her hands around her tea mug. "David, my husband, was picking Sophia up from dance class. Thursday night. 6:30, same routine we'd done 100 times. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit them head on." Her voice was matter-of-fact, but Marcus could see the effort it took to maintain that calm. "David died instantly. Sophia lived for 3 hours at the hospital." Marcus felt sick. "Elena, the worst part," she continued, staring into her tea, "was that I was at home making dinner, their favorite chicken enchiladas with extra cheese. I kept it warm for hours, thinking they were just running late. I didn't know they were never coming home. God, Elena, I can't imagine. For months afterward, I couldn't cook anything. The smell of food made me sick. I lost 30 pounds and probably would have wasted away completely if my neighbor hadn't started bringing me meals." Elena looked up at Marcus. "Then one day, about a year later, I smelled someone making chocolate chip cookies, and instead of making me sad, it made me remember Sophia laughing in our kitchen, flour in her hair, chocolate on her cheeks. I realized I wasn't honoring her memory by refusing to cook. I was burying it." "So you started cooking again?" "I started cooking for other people, families who needed help, elderly neighbors, anyone who needed a meal made with care." Elena's voice grew stronger. It became a way to keep Sophia's love of cooking alive. Even though she wasn't there to share it, Marcus reached across the table and covered Elena's hand with his. She'd be proud of what you're doing. I hope so. Elena turned her hand palm up and squeezed his fingers. Your children have given me a gift. Marcus, they've let me be part of a family again, even if it's not the family I lost. Elena, Marcus said quietly, what you've given us is so much more than cooking. You've given us back our laughter, our sense of home, each other. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands linked across the table. Two parents who had learned that love doesn't die with loss, it just finds new ways to express itself. There's something else, Elena said suddenly. Something I haven't told you. Marcus waited, sensing this was important. I knew your wife, Elena said quietly. Not well, but I knew her. Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. What? About 5 years ago, I taught cooking classes at the community center downtown. Beth signed up for one of my beginner courses. Elena's voice grew gentle with memory. She was terrible at first, burned everything. Couldn't crack an egg without getting shell everywhere. But she was determined to learn because she wanted to cook for her family. Marcus stared at Elena, his mind reeling. You taught Beth to cook. For 6 weeks. She was one of my favorite students because she never gave up. No matter how many disasters she created, Elena smiled. She talked about you and the children constantly. How Tyler was starting to play football. How Sarah was reading chapter books. How the twins were learning to ride bikes. I remember that class, Marcus said slowly. She came home every Tuesday night covered in flour and so excited about what she'd learned. She said her teacher was patient and kind and made everyone feel like they could become real cooks if they just practiced enough. She did become a real cook. More than that, she became someone who cooked with love. Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. The last class, she brought in a batch of chocolate chip cookies she'd made for your family. They were perfect golden brown, just the right balance of crispy and chewy. She was so proud. Marcus felt his own eyes burning. She never stopped talking about those cookies. Said they were proof she'd finally figured out the secret to cooking. She had, Elena whispered. The secret was never about technique or recipes. It was about cooking for people you love. Elena, why didn't you tell me this before? Because I wasn't sure you'd want someone around who reminded you of Beth. And because, she hesitated, because working with your family has helped me heal too. And I was afraid if you knew the connection, it might change things. Marcus stood up and moved around the table, pulling Elena into a gentle hug. It doesn't change anything except to make me more grateful. Beth would be so happy to know you're here, taking care of her children. Elena leaned into the embrace, and Marcus felt her shoulders shake with quiet tears. I miss her, she whispered. I only knew her for 6 weeks, but she was so full of life, so devoted to her family. I miss having students like her. She'd want you to know, Marcus said softly, that her children are lucky to have you, and so am I. They held each other in the quiet kitchen, two people bound together by loss and love, and the memory of a woman who had brought them both joy in different ways. When they finally separated, Elena wiped her eyes and smiled. There's one more thing Beth would want you to know. What's that? She was planning to surprise you with a home-cooked Thanksgiving dinner that year. She'd been practicing the recipes for weeks, determined to make everything from scratch. Elena's smile grew wider. I still have her menu, written in her terrible handwriting, with little notes about what each person in the family liked best. Marcus felt his heart clench with love and loss. She never got to make that dinner. No, Elena said quietly, but maybe this year, we could make it together in her honor. Marcus looked at this woman who had brought his family back to life, who had loved and lost just as he had, who carried pieces of his wife's memory in her heart alongside her own grief. I think, he said, Beth would love that idea. November arrived with crisp mornings and the kind of golden light that made everything look like a painting. The children had grown comfortable with Elena's daily presence, no longer surprised to find her in the kitchen when they came downstairs for breakfast or raced in from school hungry and full of stories. Marcus had grown comfortable with something else entirely: the way his heart sped up when Elena smiled, the way he found excuses to linger in the kitchen while she cooked, the way her laughter could lift his mood even after the most difficult day on the ranch. He was falling in love with her, and it terrified him. Not because he felt guilty about Beth in quiet moments. He could almost feel his wife's approval, her gentle encouragement to open his heart again. But because Elena had become so integral to his family's happiness that the thought of losing her felt like tempting fate. The children, with the uncanny perception of young people, had begun to notice the way their father's eyes followed Elena around the kitchen, the way he smiled more readily when she was near, the way he'd started wearing his good shirts even for everyday dinners. "Dad likes Elena," Lily announced one Saturday morning with 6-year-old directness. "Lily?" Sarah hissed, glancing toward the kitchen where Elena was making pancakes and Marcus was supposedly reading the newspaper. "What he does. He gets all smiley when she talks to him." "Elena's nice," Emma offered quietly. "I hope she stays forever." "People don't stay forever," Tyler said with 16-year-old cynicism, but his voice lacked its usual sharp edge. Even he had softened under Elena's patient influence. "Some people do," Noah said thoughtfully, "if they love each other enough." The twins, as usual, spoke in unison. "Do you think Dad will marry Elena?" "Boys!" Sarah's mortification was complete, but the question hung in the air like a challenge. In the kitchen, Elena had gone very still at the stove, and Marcus had abandoned all pretense of reading the newspaper. They looked at each other across the space that had become so familiar, so comfortable, so fraught with possibility. "Kid," Marcus called out, "why don't you go get dressed? We need to feed the horses before lunch." The children scattered with unusual speed, and suddenly Marcus and Elena were alone with the weight of overheard conversations and unspoken feelings. "I should apologize for them," Marcus said. "They don't have much of a filter." "Children usually don't," Elena replied, turning back to the pancakes. "It's not always a bad thing." "Elena," Marcus stood up, moved toward her, then stopped, uncertain. "What are we doing here?" She set down her spatula and turned to face him fully. "I don't know," she admitted. "I know what I was hired to do, and I know what this has become, but I don't know what we call it." "What has it become?" Elena was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. "Something I wasn't looking for but somehow needed." Marcus stepped closer. "I need to tell you something. I'm falling in love with you, and it scares the hell out of me." "Ako, why does it scare you?" "Because I can't lose anyone else. Because my children need you. And if something happened, if you left—" "Marcus," Elena said softly, reaching up to touch his cheek, "I'm not going anywhere." "You can't promise that. Nobody can." "You're right," she agreed. "But I can promise that I won't leave by choice. I can promise that what I feel for you, for your children, for this family, it's real. It's not about replacing what you lost or what I lost. It's about building something new." Marcus covered her hand with his own, leaning into her touch. "What do you feel?" "I feel like I found my way home," Elena whispered. "I feel like Sophia led me here, to this family that needed healing, to these children who needed love, to you." "Elena, I love you." "Marcus, I love your children. I love the life we've built together, even if we never planned it." Marcus kissed her then, soft and gentle, full of promise and hope, and the kind of love that grows from shared meals and quiet conversations and the daily choice to care for each other. When they broke apart, Elena smiled. "Your children are going to be insufferable about this." "Completely insufferable," Marcus agreed. "Lily will probably plan our wedding before lunch." "Our wedding?" Elena raised an eyebrow. Marcus felt his cheeks heat. "I mean, hypothetically, if we were, someday." Elena silenced him with another kiss. "I love you too, you rambling cowboy." From the stairway came the sound of muffled cheering and what sounded suspiciously like Tyler saying, "Finally, we have an audience," Elena murmured against Marcus's lips. Let them watch. Marcus replied, they're part of this too. And indeed, when they turned toward the doorway, 7 faces were peeked around the corner in various states of delight and triumph. Are you getting married? Lily demanded, bouncing on her toes. Are we moving too fast? Sarah asked, ever the responsible one. Will Elena be our stepmom? The twins wanted to know. Can we call you Mom now? Noah asked Elena directly. Elena looked at Marcus, then at the children who had become hers in every way that mattered. How about we start with yes, we love each other, and figure out the rest as we go? That's very wise, Emma said solemnly. Love is complicated. Where did you learn that, sweetheart? Marcus asked. Emma shrugged. From watching you and Elena. You've been in love for weeks. You just didn't know it yet. The adults looked at each other and burst out laughing. Leave it to a 10-year-old to put everything in perspective. Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and cold, with frost covering the pastures and the kind of crystalline light that made everything look like it had been touched by magic. Marcus woke early, as was his habit, and lay in bed listening to the sounds of his house coming alive. In the kitchen, he could hear Elena moving around, beginning preparations for the feast she'd been planning for weeks. The menu was ambitious turkey with cornbread stuffing, mashed potatoes with real cream, green bean casserole, homemade cranberry sauce, sweet potato souffle, and 3 different pies for dessert. But more than that, it was Beth's menu, the one she'd planned 5 years ago and never got to make. Elena had found the original list in Beth's cookbook, written in her careful handwriting with little notes about each family member's preferences. Tyler likes extra gravy, the note read. Sarah prefers sweet potatoes to regular. The twins will only eat green beans if they're hidden in casserole. Emma loves cranberry sauce shaped like a can. Noah needs everything to be the right temperature. Lily wants to help with everything. At the bottom, in Beth's flowing script, for my family with all my love. Marcus had cried when Elena showed him the list, overwhelmed by this gift from his wife's past and grateful beyond words that Elena wanted to honor it. Downstairs, he found Elena already deep in preparation, her hair pulled back and an apron tied around her waist. The kitchen smelled like sage and butter and the promise of a feast. How can I help? Marcus asked, kissing her cheek. Check on the turkey in an hour. Other than that, just keep the children from getting under my feet, Elena replied, smiling at him over a bowl of stuffing. They're going to want to help. I know, that's why I made a list of age-appropriate jobs. Lily gets to arrange dinner rolls in a basket. Noah can taste test everything. Emma's in charge of making place cards. The twins are on table setting duty. Sarah can help with the gravy. And Tyler gets to carve the turkey with his old man. Marcus finished. He'll like that. I thought he might. The morning progressed in a symphony of controlled chaos. The children rotated through the kitchen in shifts, each contributing to the meal in their own way. Lily took her dinner roll arrangement very seriously, creating elaborate patterns that she insisted told the story of their family. Noah proved to be an excellent taste tester, offering detailed critiques of seasoning levels. Emma's place cards were works of art, each one featuring a tiny drawing related to the person who would sit there. The twins managed to set the table without breaking anything, a minor miracle that Elena attributed to the calming influence of good food smells. Sarah proved adept at gravy making, following Elena's patient instructions with the seriousness of a chemistry student. And Tyler, surprising everyone, asked Elena to teach him how to properly sharpen the carving knife. Mom always said a sharp knife was safer than a dull one, he explained, his voice casual but his eyes serious. Your mom was right, Elena agreed. About a lot of things. Yeah, Tyler said quietly. She was. By early afternoon, the feast was ready. The turkey emerged from the oven golden and perfect. The side dishes were warming in their appointed serving bowls, and the dining room table had been extended with leaves that hadn't been used in years to accommodate not just the Sullivan family, but also Paul Kirshner and his wife Marie, who had become like grandparents to the children, and Elena's neighbor Mrs. Chen, who would have otherwise spent the holiday alone, as they gathered around the table. Marcus looked at the faces surrounding him, his 7 children, glowing with happiness and full bellies in anticipation. Elena, radiant with the satisfaction of a meal well prepared. Their friends, grateful to be included in this celebration of family and abundance. Who wants to say grace? Marcus asked, a tradition they'd maintained even through the darkest days after Beth's death. I will, Elena said quietly. She reached for Marcus's hand on one side and Lily's on the other, and the circle completed itself around the table. Dear God, Elena began, her voice clear and warm. Thank you for this meal, prepared with love and shared with gratitude. Thank you for this family, which has shown me that healing is possible and that love multiplies when it's shared. Thank you for Beth, whose recipes and whose love still nourish this family. And thank you for second chances, for full tables, and for the reminder that the most important ingredient in any meal is the love with which it's made. Amen. Amen, the table echoed, and Marcus felt his heart swell with gratitude so intense it almost hurt. The meal was everything Elena had promised and more. The turkey was perfectly seasoned and moist, the stuffing rich with herbs and cornbread, the mashed potatoes fluffy enough to make Lily sigh with pleasure. Every dish was a testament to Elena's skill and care. But more than that, they were a testament to Beth's love for her family, preserved in her carefully written notes, and Elena's love, expressed through hours of patient preparation. As they ate, conversation flowed easily around the table. Paul told stories about Marcus as a young man just starting the ranch. Marie shared memories of Beth's determined efforts to master cooking. Mrs. Chen described Thanksgivings in China and how grateful she was to be included in this American tradition. The children chattered about school and friends and plans for Christmas, their voices bright with contentment. Tyler, who had been sullen and angry for so long, actually laughed at one of Josh's terrible jokes. Sarah, free from her usual caretaking duties, allowed herself to be silly with the twins. Emma showed Mrs. Chen her latest drawings, explaining in detail the symbolism behind each color choice. Noah proclaimed each dish the best thing ever, with the enthusiasm of someone discovering good food for the first time, and Lily provided running commentary on everything, her 6-year-old observations keeping the entire table entertained. Marcus watched it all with wonder, hardly able to believe this was his life, his family, his table, a year ago. Thanksgiving had been a subdued affair, takeout turkey from the grocery store, minimal conversation, everyone going through the motions of gratitude while feeling mostly numb. This year felt like a resurrection after the main course. As Elena and Sarah cleared plates and brought out the parade of desserts, pumpkin pie, pecan pie, and apple crisp with vanilla ice cream, Marcus stood up. I'd like to say something, he announced, and the table quieted. A year ago, I wasn't sure we'd make it to this Thanksgiving, not because of any external threat, but because we were lost. We were 7 people living in the same house, but not really living together, not really connected to each other or to the idea that life could be good again. Marcus's voice grew stronger as he continued. Elena, you came into our lives to cook for us, but you did so much more than that. You taught us that healing is possible, that families can be rebuilt, that love doesn't end when someone dies, it just makes room for new love to grow alongside it. He turned to his children. You 7 have shown me that resilience is real, that children can teach adults as much as adults teach children, and that laughter really is the best medicine for almost anything. Finally, he looked around the table at their guests. And to our friends, who have supported us through the hard times and are here to celebrate the good ones, thank you for reminding us that family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing to show up for each other, again and again. Marcus raised his glass of apple cider. To Beth, who started this family and whose love still guides us. To Elena, who helped us find our way back to each other. To all of us, for having the courage to believe in second chances. And to this table, which has become the heart of our home again. Cheers, the table responded, glasses clinking, voices raised in celebration. As the evening wound down and their guests prepared to leave, Marcus found Elena in the kitchen, washing dishes despite protest from everyone else that she'd done enough. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For giving us back our traditions, for honoring Beth's memory while making new memories, for loving us. Elena dried her hands and turned to face him. Marcus, I need to tell you something. Okay. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I've been carrying this around for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Marcus stared at the box, his heart pounding. Elena, I know it's unconventional for the woman to propose, but nothing about our relationship has been conventional. Elena's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. I love you, Marcus Sullivan. I love your children as if they were my own. I want to build a life with you, officially and forever. Will you marry me? Marcus laughed, a sound of pure joy and disbelief. Are you serious? Completely serious. Elena Rodriguez, I have never wanted anything more in my entire life than to marry you. He pulled her into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. From the doorway came the sound of applause and cheering. 7 children stood there in their pajamas, faces bright with delight and triumph. We knew it, Lily shouted. We knew you'd get married. How long have you been eavesdropping? Marcus asked, not really caring about the answer. Since, thank you, Tyler admitted with a grin. We wanted to make sure Elena said yes. Actually, Sarah corrected, we wanted to make sure Dad said yes. Elena's been part of our family for months. Dad was the holdout. Marcus looked at Elena, who was laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. I love your children, she managed to say. Our children, Marcus corrected, and Elena's laughter turned to happy tears. The wedding took place on a crisp December morning at the ranch, with Pastor Williams officiating and what seemed like half the county in attendance. Elena wore a simple ivory dress that Elena had helped her pick out, and Marcus wore his best suit with a tie that Lily had insisted matched Elena's flowers. The ceremony was held in the barn, decorated with white lights and winter greenery by Sarah and Emma, who had thrown themselves into wedding planning with the enthusiasm of professional coordinators. Tyler walked Elena down the aisle, proud and protective in his role as surrogate father figure. The twins served as ring bearers, managing not to lose the rings despite several close calls. Noah and Emma were in charge of music, operating an old CD player with the seriousness of symphony conductors, and Lily, of course, was the flower girl, scattering rose petals with dramatic flair while providing running commentary on everything from Elena's dress to the appropriateness of crying at weddings. I take you, Elena Rodriguez, Marcus said when the time came for vows, to be my wife, my partner, and the mother of my heart to our 7 children. You came into our lives as a cook, but you became so much more our healer, our teacher, our bridge back to joy. I promise to love you, support you, and share every meal with you for the rest of our lives. I take you, Marcus Sullivan, Elena replied, her voice strong and clear, to be my husband, my partner, and the father who helped me learn that families can be built as well as born. You and your children gave me a reason to cook again, to hope again, to love again. I promise to nourish your body and soul, to stand by you through all seasons, and to help you raise these magnificent children with all the love in my heart. When Pastor Williams pronounced them husband and wife, the barn erupted in cheers. Marcus kissed his new bride, while their children whooped and applauded and generally made enough noise to be heard in the next county. The reception that followed was a potluck affair, with every family contributing a dish and the long tables groaning under the weight of shared abundance. Elena and Marcus's wedding cake was simple vanilla with buttercream frosting, but it was surrounded by dozens of other desserts brought by friends and neighbors who wanted to celebrate this union that had brought so much joy to the community. As the evening progressed and the dancing began, Tyler had surprised everyone by asking Elena for the first dance after Marcus. A gesture that left both adults in tears, Marcus found himself standing at the edge of the celebration, watching his new wife laugh with Mrs. Chen while Lily climbed into her lap for a better view of the festivities. You look happy, Paul Kirshner said, joining Marcus with 2 cups of coffee. I am happy, Marcus replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. Happier than I thought I'd ever be again. Beth would be pleased, Paul said quietly. She always worried about what would happen to you all if something happened to her. I think she'd like knowing Elena found you. I think so too, Marcus agreed. Elena says she feels like Beth led her here, and some days I think she might be right. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as Elena helped Emma show off her latest drawing to a group of admiring adults, while simultaneously keeping track of Noah's sugar intake and mediating a dispute between the twins about wedding cake protocol. She's got this, Paul observed. The kids, the chaos, all of it. She just fits. Yeah, Marcus said, his voice soft with wonder. She does. Later that night, after the last guest had gone home and the children had finally been persuaded to go to bed. But we want to stay up for the whole wedding night, Lily had protested. Marcus and Elena sat on their front porch swing, wrapped in blankets and watching the stars. So, Elena said, curled against Marcus's side, how does it feel to be married again? Right, Marcus replied immediately. It feels right. How does it feel to be a mother of 7? Elena laughed. Terrifying and wonderful and like something I was meant to do, but never knew I wanted. Any regrets? Only one, Elena said seriously, and Marcus tensed. I wish Sophia could have met them. She would have loved having big brothers and sisters. Marcus tightened his arms around his wife. Maybe she did meet them. In a way, maybe she's part of what brought you here. I'd like to think so. They sat in peaceful silence for a while, listening to the night sounds of the ranch and the distant murmur of their children settling into sleep in the house behind them. Marcus, Elena said eventually, what? Thank you. For what this time? For taking a chance on a broken woman who answered your ad. Marcus tilted Elena's chin up so he could look into her eyes. Elena Sullivan, you were never broken. You were healing. There's a difference. How do you know? Because broken things can't love the way you love. Broken things can't cook meals that taste like home. Broken things can't take 7 scared, grieving children and help them remember how to be a family. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I love you, Marcus Sullivan. I love you too, Elena Sullivan. Welcome to the family. I've been part of this family since the first pancake, Elena replied, smiling through her tears. This just makes it official. From somewhere inside the house came a crash, followed by hushed voices and what sounded suspiciously like someone being shushed. Our children are still awake, Elena observed. Probably planning tomorrow's breakfast menu, Marcus replied. Lily mentioned something about celebration pancakes shaped like wedding rings. Of course she did. Marcus stood up, extending his hand to Elena. Come on, Mrs. Sullivan. Let's go see what trouble our family's getting into. Our family, Elena repeated, as if testing the words. I like the sound of that. Hand in hand. They walked into their house full of children and laughter, and the promise of thousands more meals shared around the table that now truly fed 8 and closed the door on their old lives. Ready to begin their new one together? In the kitchen. The coffee pot was already set for morning. 7 lunch boxes were lined up on the counter, and a note was stuck to the refrigerator in Lily's careful handwriting. Welcome home, Mama Elena. Love, your family. Sometimes the most extraordinary miracles happen one meal at a time, around a dinner table, in the quiet moments when love grows strong enough to heal what seemed irreparably broken. The Sullivan Ranch was full of such miracles now, and would be for many years to come.